Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the grand finale. This is first time we do this. It's going to be a full day of panels, live panels with all our amazing speakers from PlatformCon. Not all of them, because there's a lot of them, but like some of them that will join us and our media partners to discuss the good and the bad from PlatformCon 2024, what's hot in platform engineering, and kind of looking at the future, what's coming next, and what we can all expect in this ever-evolving space. So the way we're gonna do this is we have I think like 6 or 7 different panels throughout the day. This one that you're seeing right now is our opening panel, where we'll discuss best practices in platform engineering. And I am joined by Anna, who's a former engagement lead at Red Hat and huge proponent of platform as a product, and had not one but 2 talks at PlatformCon this year. Hi, Anna.
Hello, everybody.
And we have Joe, who's the head architect for developer platforms and developer experience at UKG. Hey, Joe, how you doing? Joining us from the US.
Glad to be here, guys. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you. And then we got Andre, who's leading the Competence Center and Platform Engineering practice at Bechtle. Hey, Andre. Hey, and Nikki, finally, the one and only CEO and CTO of OpenCredo. Hello, Nikki. How are you doing?
I'm good. Good to be here. Thanks.
Awesome. Cool. So we'll get started in just a second. I do want to remind people, if you have, first of all, let us know where you're joining from either in the YouTube chat or on the Slack or in LinkedIn. There's some really cool activity in the last couple of days of people just like, hey, I'm joining from here, I love from there, and love from there. And we literally have people from all over the world, which is really cool to see. And then same, if you have any questions throughout the chat that we're going to have, just drop them in there. I'll try to bring them in at a relevant time, but don't be afraid, don't be shy, just chime in. Okay, cool. So I want to get started in just a second. I do want to acknowledge that we have a fantastic panel today here. I think it's a really cool mix of thought leaders and people leading the charge in platform engineering, practitioners giving us their sort of like enterprise perspective and things. So I'm really excited about the conversation today. Maybe we could just start with a quick kind of, hey, what were your highlights of the weeks, if any? I mean, we've all watched a lot of talks at this point and seen the conversation and so on. You don't all have to, jump in and say something, but if there's anything that comes to mind, maybe like Nikki, I know you were at the live day in London on Wednesday. So how was that? And are there any other things that stood out throughout the week for you?
Yeah, so I think the live there at London was fantastic. It was the first time we've done that live, but there were some amazing talks there, which will also be live next week, I believe, on PlatformCon. So that'll be even more to look out for, which is great. It was really great networking opportunity, and actually, kind of being there with people and being able to talk in person, which was fantastic. But I think there was so much good, good content on the day, but also during PlatformCon. The general sort of sessions. I think one that I did watch actually was the interview with Kelsey Hightower and Casper, and that actually was quite great. I love Kelsey. He just gives it as it comes. It's like shoot from the hip, and just very practical, sort of wisdom and thing from that. So there were so many, but that was one that I thought was actually quite good.
Yeah, awesome. I agree with that. Joe, Andre, Anna, any highlights from you before we jump into the juicy part?
Yeah, what's interesting is I can relate to almost all of it. It's a journey thing for me and my organization, and a lot of what I took away from that is pain points that we're feeling out there in industry with platform engineering. How do I apply best practices across the board? There was a theme, I think the Google team, I think it was Sahil and Srinivas, if I'm not mistaken, from Google, kind of highlighted one thing where they said, platform engineering is hard. It's definitely not something that's, easily spun up. I've been doing this for a long time, and every organization, whether it's, moving to the cloud, moving to dev, acceleration, moving that that needle for your customers, getting things out there faster. It's always a challenge getting those builds out the door really quick, right? And that was really resonating with me as far as platform being difficult to put together. So I found a lot of that theme across a lot of the talks, and interesting, solutions to some of those challenges. So, it's really great speakers, great topics. I think it all applies very nicely across the board. Always love listening to Casper. He's got some really great down to earth insights, of course. So love hearing what he has to say.
That's awesome. Cool to hear. All right. Anything from you, Andrea? Did you want to say something?
I totally agree with Nikki. Yeah, being live again, meeting your customers, your partners, your colleagues is really great, especially after Corona. And we also made a watch party in St. Augustine in Germany. And personally, this was my highlight. And we had some good food out of our kitchen, and in a very casual atmosphere, watched some talks, and that was pretty amazing. And it's also really amazing to see how big the momentum of the platform engineering movement really got. And if we remember the old days, not too many people were maybe attending, and now it's really massive. And that's really amazing.
Yeah, and I've heard some great things about your kitchen over there.
It's good. You have to check it out next time. You're always welcome.
Yeah, you have some pretty cool stuff going on. Anything from you, Anna?
The observation that there was quite a few talks focused on the culture and practices that are heavily based on foundations and so on. It's just not just technology, not just processes, but the culture that is so important to get that platform engineering evolving in the organization. So I was really happy to see the amount of talks focused on that topic.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And something that we really stress in the community, right? Like, so many times people are very worried about, hey, what tech stack should I pick and so on. But really, that's almost never the limitation. It's really how can your organization accept the sort of like the org transformation level change that you want to drive with platform engineering. So let's get right into it. Let's get into actually a really important cultural component of platform engineering when it comes to best practices, which is, again, one of the key topics I think that emerged this year as well, PlatformCon 2024, which is platform as a product. And I mean, we have some real experts here. So I want to start with you, Anna. Why don't you kick us off and give us a definition and really set the stage here? What do we mean with platform as a product? How is that different maybe than what some teams are used to, or in other words, what's new? Like, why should people care about platform as a product, as a concept?
I think this comes down to traditionally in the IT world, infrastructure and anything related to the platform was treated as a project. And naturally, the problem with the project is short-lived. So one team does the work, then it throws it over the fence, and the other team takes care of that. So focus on the platform as a product changes, first of all, the ownership, because the team that starts designing the platform, building the platform, and maintaining the platform is the same team. And that team focuses on that life cycle of a product from the moment it's conceived to the moment it's decommissioned. But it's also using all the product management approaches to managing the platform. So focus on your users. That's a very good foundation for developer experience. Focus on other personas that are important to the success of our platform, like compliance, like security, like decision makers. Thinking about the platform adoption as opposed to mandating it to the users. Thinking about focus on business value, how the platform can help our organization succeed. It's not just building the platform for the sake of building a platform, trying to connect it to all the business that we are doing and making it a successful internal product that's fully widely adopted by our organization, and also making sure that we measure that adoption, we measure satisfaction for our product, we continuously learning from what the feedback we get from our users, improving it, and so on. So that's the definition in my head of the platform as a product. So anything else I kind of missed? Important stuff?
I think you covered it pretty well. Anything to add from your end, Nikki? What do you think? You're muted.
Apologies for that. Yeah, I think Anna covered it quite well. Yeah, it's moving from that project mindset to a product mindset, and that comes with a whole bunch of interesting challenges. So moving away from that cost center mentality as well to actually creating value and stuff for the users. So yeah, there's I think it was covered really well. So yeah, good.
Nice. So Andre, I mean, Bechtle is a huge service provider, right? Like you're rolling out these platforms for a lot of like customers. What's your approach when you kind of like want to deliver these platforms as products for your customers?
Yeah, to be honest, it's sometimes for us pretty hard to deliver this approach to our customers, yeah, because the mindset needs to change, definitely. Yeah, so we face a lot of resistance to change. Yeah, and sometimes you have, I always call them the Frankenstein architectures that are in place already, yeah, through different DevOps projects. Yeah, these things were built, and we then have to somehow convince people now to get a product mindset. And most of the time, these are then infrastructure people. And don't forget, we are Germans. Yeah, we make it extra hard. Yeah, so. Really the Germans, especially in the regulated space, are pretty, bound to their systems, and systems most of the time they protect the system, and what we really tried is to start small, in getting into platform engineering. We try also to use the MVP approach. We try to bring developers and engineers pretty fast together, that they can also try out things, see the value pretty fast, and we also always, of course, try to show executives that this is now of value, and especially in the regulated space, also executives see that you can raise security levels through platform engineering. That's right now, as I work in a very regulated space, one of the big topics in Germany, especially for decision makers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point. Joe, I mean, when you're rolling out your platform, right? What challenges? I mean, I guess like culturally, maybe it's like you don't have as many Germans blocking you there. But what were the I guess like the technical as well and cultural challenges, and what are you doing actually to remedy those challenges?
I think, what's interesting with our company is, in April 2020, we went through a pretty large merger, which ended up resulting in Ultimate Kronos Group, which is UKG. And that was spun off by two other companies. One organization, our Ultimate Software organization, was pretty far down the path, I'd say, just technically, culturally, from a adoption of platform and how that works. Pretty far down on the path as far as the maturity model, right? And then you have other pockets from Kronos, which is our other organization that we merged into from. There were maybe some pockets there that were a little legacy in technology, right? So you look at a hybrid organization that, some process, some business process, could have been legacy in some cases, and some that were more fast-paced, very SaaS-oriented, ready to go. I think what we're challenged with today is coming up with, really kind of taking it a step back, looking at the customer, right? Taking a look at what is it we're trying to fulfill from the customer's end, and then work back from that customer, right? We take a look at what do we have today from our landscape of products, services, capabilities, all the way back to the developer, and build that user-centric design through, good design in platform, good design in CI/CD, good designs in the technologies to support all those things. Obviously, patterns, practices, and all that play into that. But really, what's the goal there is really getting features out the door, getting good feedback from our customer base, understanding where we can turn the knobs, make a little bit of more course corrections as we go. Our developer experience, right? Our developer experience, again, I'm in a developer acceleration team. That's my team name, right? And I think the engineers, we have some amazing engineers on this team. And our developer experience is something that, we work hand in hand with our developers and our engineers and our architects that are across the organization, and really kind of focusing on what makes their lives easy today. And it might be already in place, but what else can we do to enhance that, right? So we like to meet them in the middle. We take a look at what they have. We take a look at, what we can do to enable those things and bring that to the business, right? Again, looking at a product-based platform engineering mentality and bring that to the engineering organization and align to that across the board and leverage commonality across all of those things.
I love that. And do you see the challenge there in this sort of like mindset shift from, maybe working with like existing teams that are used to like different ways of collaborating between infrastructure and operations, developers, and so on, going there? Like, how do you do that? Like, do you build an entire new team? Do you try to like, retrain maybe and have this like mindset shift in the existing team? Is it a combination of that? What do you do there?
Yeah, it's interesting. I my past was engineering, right? So I was the guy building those solutions on the back end, right? Now I'm looking for platform teams to give me, a way to the production front door, right? I like having that kind of mentality, because now I come into the platform area and I kind of look at it from what benefits can I get from a platform? How do I meet them in the middle? How do I understand what works well for this organization, for this team, for this business unit, and what doesn't? What are some of the gaps? What are the things that maybe they've done custom because they had to get their deadlines met? And how can we leverage things that we're building in the future, right? When we think about security, it's ever evolving, right? Security is something that we always have to keep in mind. How do we bring in some of the latest and greatest patterns and practices into already existing mentalities, right? And a lot of it is, we like to bring the developers, alongside of us and have them actually become our champions and actually help them build some of the platform technologies versus us kind of dictating, saying, here's your standard, go follow and off you go. That usually fails pretty badly. I think what we like to do is have them come along for the journey. They see the value in that. They become our sponsors. They become our voice to other engineers. And then those other engineers, it's almost like, you create that movement. There's a couple videos out there you can see on YouTube about creating a movement where the one guy's dancing. This is that, right? This is all about creating a movement, starting small, creating that movement and getting everybody to jump on board, right? I think that's a lot of, kind of our elementary strategy around this. And, we do have pockets that, tribal knowledge, we have, set in their ways, but, what we're seeing now is that tribal knowledge and that set in your ways mentality is starting to lax up a little bit because they feel like they're contributing to the future good of the corporation here. So it's really exciting.
Nice. And you mentioned,
I totally agree with Joe. And one challenge we see, especially Joe mentioned it before, you should not dictate things to people. But if you want to build a product, you should also take care that not pretty strong stakeholders dictate too much what you build into your product. And that's, from my perspective, a very big challenge. You know it, when you build products, you have a strategy in mind. If you have a stakeholder that invests a lot into your product, maybe this stakeholder also is pretty strong in deciding which features will be in your product. And this also in the past showed that really your platform as a product is not the product anymore that you normally wanted to build. And this is sometimes really a showstopper. And I saw platforms that were meant in a totally different way and then were changed by people who had the budget to invest into the platform, and they then somehow manipulated the character of the product.
Good point.
Maybe just to jump in there, actually, I mean, this is where I think it's really important to have a really strong product manager and to be able to actually sort of get the various stakeholders input and stuff and try and balance that out, because exactly as you say, it used to be, he or she who shouts the loudest, that's what wins. And quite often it's sometimes the ones that are a bit more quiet and the things that they need are actually might make a huge difference for many people. So that product mentality and having a product manager that's really strong in speaking to not just the developers, but also the security and all the different aspects, I think is key to getting a more balanced platform, because I think it was in some of the talks as well, there is a huge focus, very rightly, on the developers, but there is more than just the developers. There is a much bigger community involved, including the execs who want to understand they're getting a return on investment and security and the like. And so trying to balance that, I think, is quite important.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you really need that product role that you're talking about, Nikki, right? To mediate between all of these different stakeholder groups, right? Like, how do you think about that? And in terms of, because obviously, I always feel like platform engineering is a lot about this product mindset, but it's also a lot about communication, right? It's about being able to like figuring out, hey, how do I speak C-level language to get executive support from my platform? How do I get the developers, right? How do I build that feedback loop tightly with them, right? So what do you think are some of the challenges there, and what have you seen working well to kind of like get all the different stakeholders on board with the platform moving forward?
So the biggest challenge that I've noticed working with my customer is this discrepancy between what technical people seem important and the business seems important. So one of the practices that we've been using a lot is like outcomes, focusing on outcomes, and especially those connected outcomes, how the outcomes of my platform team can impact what's important for the business. So whatever is business trying to do, are they trying to reduce time to market? Are they trying to improve satisfaction with their product, whatever, and how my 3 to 5 outcomes that I'm focusing on for the next roadmap period, 3 to 6 months, are going to impact that value of the business that the business as whole is trying to deliver. Or maybe that's the Streamline team that is working on some new feature that they're trying to launch, and how can we help them achieve that. So connecting those two outcomes and showing the team, making sure that they are visible for both teams that are working together, and making sure that they see how their work is making difference with the other team's work is super important. So that visualization. And in terms of wider stakeholder management, being able to link everything we do to the business value, being able to translate it into business value. It's not necessarily just money, because ultimately it all comes down to money. But initially, when you are at the beginning of the platform, that I happen to be working mostly with the customers that were embarking on the journey. So for us, the business value was about like gaining the expertise, being able to get trust with the initial stakeholders, like building that initial trust with security, building trust with compliance. So traditional left shift, bringing them into those the design discussion, making sure that they are involved in all our showcases, making sure that we give them ability to provide the feedback, as you mentioned. Look at the really valid feedback loops that we get quick responses, and we are able to find out what's working, what's not working, collecting data as much as possible. Like that's one of the things where our products are successful, being able to understand how the product is used, what's working, what's not working, and bringing that data into the business value discussion. And that also helps with some of those shouty stakeholders, being able to show them like where the value really lies, what does the data show, might be able to help us manage them a little bit easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned, right, this like getting started, right? I feel like getting started, getting off the ground a lot of times is like one of the hardest bits, right? And Andre, you quickly dropped this like MVP concept, right? This like minimum viable platform. Like, can you just like maybe double click on that for a second? Like, how does that help? How can that help basically organizations getting started on this platform as a product journey, quickly and in a good way?
Yeah, you can definitely start pretty quickly with an MVP. Yeah? We made these experiences, and it really worked for us as well. Yeah, so for our internal team, yeah, we did exactly that, and choose the approach of an MVP. And the good thing in my perspective is that really in a very short time, yeah, I would now suggest like 8 to 12 weeks. It depends, of course, what kind of maturity your organization has, and if you work in regulated space and have on-premises things you want to integrate. And after the time, you can really see if there's a value. Yeah, and you can also, if you go for a very practical MVP, show the people who use the technology every day, and always say these are the developers. Yeah, the developer experience really must be great, and also the engineers who have to maintain all of that. And if you can bring these people together to the table, and if they can say this concept works, yeah, especially concepts like abstraction, yeah. So we made really good experiences with SCORE, for instance, yeah, and then presenting this to the executives in a language that they understand, yeah, especially fostering the security advantages, yeah. This helps out, and then also people get really the chance to continue their platform engineering journey, because I think if you don't go pretty fast for a quick win in this, yeah, these initiatives will also be shut down by executives because they don't understand the value. Because in the past, yeah, also DevOps approach, building 20 different environments and tech stacks, yeah, did also work somehow. And 4 times a year you threw a release over the fence, and it's okay, yeah. And I think we really should focus on the MVP approach to persuade customers to go for platform engineering. It's really brilliant, very positive from my side.
And you mentioned this like maturity, right? And Joe, you also jumped in. So I want to shift gears a little bit and move to, I think, like another emerging pillar in the space when it comes to platform engineering best practices, and that's the CNCF platform engineering maturity model. So Nikki, for those who may not have heard about it yet, or have heard it but don't really know exactly what it is, can you briefly explain what the CNCF platform engineering maturity model is? How can it help organizations on their journey, and how can people use it? And should we always aim for the best, or are there nuances that we should think about?
Yeah, sure. So, so the CNCF maturity model came out in November last year. So it was actually originally donated by the great people at Centesso. And really, I would say, at its heart, what it really is, it's a collation of the sort of patterns and wisdoms that have been sort of gathered across the board from various practitioners that have been involved in many different sort of platform engineering initiatives, to like pull it into a nice handy matrix, which tries to give you, sort of describes the characteristics and the practices that exist at different stages of maturity. So it's generally sort of labeled 1 to 4 in terms of the actual kind of levels, but and then there's some aspects that it kind of measures you against, so your investment, your adoption, and a few different kind of things. And it's really there to try and provide you with enough sort of information where you can say, actually, for my organization, maybe I'm sort of here in my maturity level, maybe level 1 or 2 on the investment, and give you a bit of the sort of the characteristics and what does it mean for you to improve. So if I want to move towards maybe a more sort of scalable sort of setup, what are the things that I need to do? So it's really, it gives you a nice sort of matrix, a nice way of trying to understand where you are as an organization, but also highlight then, like, what are some of the limitations that I have at my level, and how can I actually kind of improve, so that you can understand how to kind of move forward with your journey as an organization. So I mean, in terms of what you would aim for, it's not meant to be one of these dogmatic, sort of tools that you beat people over the head and say, oh, you're only a level 1, so, woe to you. That's bad. So it really is not meant to work like that. It's really to say, okay, there's some tactical things, but maybe there's a few more strategic type things that you would want to do as you're going on this kind of journey. So it's certainly not the finished article. I would say it's still being kind of worked out, but it really gives, I think, organizations a nice starting point to be able to plot where they are, understand where they are, and then see what are the things that I can do to improve in these different areas of, like, operations and measuring your adoption and investment and those type of things. So.
And I mean, are there any particular aspects that you've kind of seen or found that that organizations struggle with when it comes to platform engineering, in terms of, like, they can't really, they seem to get stuck, right? They can't really keep maturing, keep growing there.
Yeah, so one of the aspects on the maturity model is the adoption. And I think we've spoken about this before. Like many people, one of the tools that you can use to try and get people onto your platform is just to make it mandatory and say, thou shalt be on my platform. It doesn't tend to work out very well in that case. And if you have a look at the maturity model, you'll see it's about sort of level 2-ish, where, you're kind of pushing people onto the platform. And that's because, you don't get that feedback loop. So you don't actually get to understand, look, is my platform actually worth it? Am I solving the right problems? So for me, adoption is one of the challenges or the aspects that I think we see a lot of organizations really, really kind of struggling with. And I think there's also, it's easy for people to make progress in some of the other areas, but with adoption, you've got to change a few knobs in a few different places to actually sort of make progress. And what we've found with many of the clients that we've seen is there's a few things that tend to, I guess, maybe act as a bit of an anchor or kind of hold people back. And some of that is that there's a lack of confidence, I would say, when sometimes people build these platforms and people say, well, I don't want to be the first one to go out there. I don't want to be like the first team because I don't really know if it's going to support me, if it's going to be able to, handle the load and all these type of things. And they act as a barrier. And so when teams try to maybe onboard 10 teams at a time, that's where I say that can be really problematic. It's like you've got to find those 1 or 2 teams that really want to push you all the way through so that you can then work out what are some of my challenges, what are some of my day 2 issues that I'm going to, sort of run into as I move through this journey. And without doing that, it becomes really problematic. And so that's where I see quite a lot of challenges around that space.
Super interesting.
I would like to add something. So what I see is that especially customers who gets delivered applications by external teams, external service providers like us. Most of the time they are really depending on them, and they also don't explain these external service providers what kind of standards they have to comply to. So every new external company brings a new tech stack, brings new political ideas into the customer, and this most of the time let the customers to drift away from the strategy. And this is what I see. I have a customer where we built really a nice platform. Then a very big service provider came and said, we need to deliver this kind of application in this time because we won the tender, and that's the price, that's the timeline, no agility, and we can only do it if we do the underlying technology like this. We need this Git repo, we need this CI/CD technology, and then our platform was not utilized for this project, even that it was a core application that was developed. And I see this all the time.
Yeah,
I think that's where it's important to have like an agree on what is the contract for the platform. It's like, what does the platform do? What do the teams do? And to Anna's point as well, it's like, what are the outcomes that we're trying to achieve with this? And sometimes whether you use this Git repository or another sort of Git repository, it probably doesn't matter. But I think if at least what we found is, and this is something which came up in the London Live event, documentation, to actually make it clear sometimes to people, look, this is what we expect of you, this is how it works, type thing. Because if you don't have that, it is a bit of a free-for-all. So yeah, absolutely agree, Andre.
And if I can, apologies, Jerry, go ahead.
No, Anna, go ahead.
I just wanted to add to the documentation aspect that one of the things that we can that can help us with this is the enabling teams. We cannot overstate the importance of the enabling teams, because enabling teams are those teams that team topologies people keep shouting about, but they are super important because their job is to get our team on the platform or get our team working with something and then disperse. They have to self-destruct. They are temporary teams, but they are kind of blended teams from the people who will end up using the part of the product or the feature. And that's why the focus is also on documentation and the ways of working and maybe some inner sourcing and things like that. So that's kind of one model that is really I've seen that in practice working very well. Sorry, over to you, Joe.
No, you're fine. I appreciate it. And actually, I am going to take a little bit of everyone's kind of thunder, because you guys all said something that is very close to what we're actually going through right now. And from a maturity model perspective, and Nikki, I think you're on point with the maturity model and some of the pitfalls and strengths of the maturity model. But I think one of the big things I always pull out of the maturity model is, when do you go from dictation, mandation, from a push point of view, to a, hey, we love this, we're just going to pull it in, right? It's almost like that service oriented, pull in my capability, right? I think, and one of our examples, some of the things we've done, I mean, we've done MVPs, going back to Andres, we've done MVPs ourselves. And, I think proof's in the pudding, right? When you do these kinds of things, getting teams on board, it's like, okay, yeah, I get it. You guys are putting standards together, and I understand I have to get on board with that. And whether it's mandated or I can do it myself and I have control or you have control, it's all kind of wishy-washy, and it's kind of hand-wavy at that point. I think what we have to do is we have to put together those, I hate to call them MVPs or POCs or whatever you want, pilots, but we did that. We actually did a POC where we took a workload that is a common workload, deploy a Kubernetes cluster to an environment through the standard process and the new process we're trying to build, right? So this is coming through a very common dev portal, going through the YAMLs and the structure and all that, and deploying that, right? And, lots of naysayers, yeah, we've done that before, and it is what it is, and sounds good. But what I'll say is the results of that really scream, success, right? And this is where you get those people going, yeah, you guys are mandating, that's a push. Well, after the results came out, it's almost like they shifted gears and said, we want that. Now we're going to pull that into our workloads, right? And the results were really crazy, because we went from a process where we diagnosed the entire process, soup to nuts, and it took 24 weeks to deploy a Kubernetes workload in 20 tickets with numerous pull requests, right? So you can imagine, just to get a Kubernetes cluster out there, it took forever, right? With all the processes and all the blockers and all the fun stuff that goes along with that. We were able to deploy through an IDP workload, through the way we built things, and actually drive that in less than 1 day. So we were able to show, through MVP, pilot, whatever the case may be, that in 1 day, you're able to do the exact same thing through very streamlined, very automated, templatized based, kind of deployment model. And we went from, kind of building these things out. And in that 1 day, it took 10 minutes with 0 tickets. So, I mean, proof's in the pudding there, right? I mean, that's really, when they saw that, it's almost like a no-brainer. They were all about, let me have that. I want to pull that into my workload. How do I incorporate that? How do we move forward with that kind of mentality? So it's kind of the tipping point of when we go from push to pull.
I'd agree with that. I'd say there's another angle to this as well that we found as a bit of a challenge, though, is that even if it is great, even if it is better, there is often there's a requirement on the teams to still do their product stuff, and it takes a little bit of time sometimes to convert your people's sort of applications from whatever it is to the new setup, and there's inevitably some kind of sort of changes and stuff that's required. And what we found, I don't know if any of you others have found this as well, is that can actually be one of the challenges, that even though it's better, it's like, I just don't have time to do this. I don't have the bandwidth. I don't have the ability. And to Anna's point as well, this is where the enablement teams, I think, is a crucial part to say, let us help you with that, because actually we can show you that we can do this a little bit faster. And so I think often there's a lot of inertia in some of the teams, and sometimes I think it's almost like it's a weird analogy, but sometimes like eating an olive. Like, you might not have liked it when you were a kid, but then you get acquired to the taste, and sometimes you need to get acquired to the new sort of way of doing things. And so a little bit of enablement team, a little bit of push pull, you eventually kind of get there, I think.
That's awesome.
And if I can add something to what you said, Nikki, about like those two workloads, right? Because there is the new and the old. So what I'm finding a lot is that people do not visualize them together, and that team is being expected to do their 9-to-5 job old style, and then all the new stuff is like a nice to have on the side of the desk. So what we try to do in this situation is like bring all of that to one backlog, make the work visible, and then when you, as you said, having the enabling team working together and trying to figure out better ways of working. But it's really important to have just one backlog of work, making sure that people can focus and can build the right prioritization of anything that's outstanding.
In regards of documentation, this was mentioned before multiple times by Anna and Nikki. Yeah? So I think going for really an IDP, it helps you a lot to document the stuff properly. Yeah, just imagine the old environments you had. Yeah, you had like X environments, nothing is really well documented. And what we right now do is that's ongoing. We try to document our platform into the enterprise architecture. So that means we really want to connect also specific enterprise architecture management products with our platform architecture, and we automatically want to document deployments we do, yeah, microservices catalogs. We want to document the IT components, resources that we use, and we want to also document how they stand in relation to business processes and business capabilities. Yeah? And this approach for the future, I think, is really interesting. Maybe next year on PlatformCon, you will see something around that. Yeah, let's see. But there's so much potential because the standardization is so nice in regards of IDP concepts, yeah, that we can definitely get value out of that.
And I mean, the other thing that you mentioned earlier, Andrew, was this idea of like, you know, secure environments, right? Or like highly regulated environments. How do you strike the balance there, right? Between the like platform engineering really kind of like driving the standardization and compliance by design, right? And enabling this, but without it becoming almost like a blocker, right?
Yeah, for me, especially in the space of my regulated customers, compliance, security, these are really the most important bits. And when I really see at the moment how customers try to be compliant and do security checks, come on, guys, be honest, yeah? They do they have PowerShell scripts on Windows, they have Bash stuff running, which is then batched in a nightly run and then tries to document stuff into other systems, yeah, to then have your compliance dashboard, yeah. And I all the time explain these customers that with the approach of abstracting developers from engineers, and that's classically what SCORE, for instance, does. Yeah, so we try to specify workloads, and we don't give information of the critical infrastructure to the developers. Yeah, means if you go through your pipelines, if you abstract in the way you should abstract, yeah, your systems should be always compliant, yeah, because nothing could get into production, into dev staging that's not compliant, yeah, and we don't need these regular compliance checks, for instance. And believe me, my customers, they waste a lot of taxpayers' money to be compliant and to regularly check Linux instances, Windows instances, containerized environments with some automation magic, if it's compliant or not, yeah. And people then tell me, Andre, do you really think that's so easy? I said, no, it's not really easy. It's just another approach, and it's the better approach than the things like you did it 20 years ago. Yeah, and that's my point of view from the practical side. Yeah.
How important is that for you, Joe, in terms of like just driving compliance to design, make sure that like, hey, both my infrastructure and operations team and my security counterparts can actually kind of sleep well at night because the platform actually enforces stuff by default?
You know, here at UKG, security is like, you know, day one, you know, job one, you know, the most prioritized thing that we do. We've actually spun off, you know, what we call security champions across the organization to, you know, even within our platform teams, with our dev acceleration teams, really become experts, you know, those kind of embedded experts across the organization. And really what we're driving is, you know, security across the organization. Like everybody needs to have secure development, period, right? Whether that's developing code for a feature on a product, whether that's developing code that is building the next pipeline, UI, all that, right? So we put together a great program around that, and we're just looking forward to kind of moving that forward. Data privacy to us is humongous, right? I mean, we deal with a lot of customer data, and customer data, if you want to break trust quickly, leak out your customer data. That'll do it for you, right? So what we take extremely sensitive is obviously PII, data privacy, handling of the employee data for our customers, making sure that we build that trust with our customers on a day-to-day basis. Make sure they feel that they have their best interest in what we put together. We test that on a frequent basis through our pipelines. We have tools, techniques, processes in place to prove that we've done that. Give a good litmus test on where we're at with some of those things. There's SLAs in place where we're scanning things on a frequent basis to make sure that we are staying compliant with that. Our big thing with platform is secrets management, token management, API keys, identity federation, workload identity federation, impersonation. These are things that are extremely important as we start building out our pipelines, because not that you can just get compromised at the application level, but at the build level, this seems to be the new place where a lot of malicious actors like to play. So we have to be very vigilant of that. We have to be very aware of that. And we bleed that into our test processes too. So all that's kind of blended into that as well. The other part is, we're building, infrastructure as code. So we need to be very vigilant around vulnerability management, right? And I know, as a developer, engineer, architect, and director on teams that I've built applications where I'm like, vulnerability management, CrowdStrike, yeah, it's a thorn. You know what? The more you have around vulnerability management and visibility to that, and make it more gamified, and make sure that you're getting your organization in a way that really does see that as a priority. To me, that's where we are as far as UKG, and we are just accelerating that as we go forward.
Love that. That's a really interesting perspective from kind of the enterprise angle, and I mean it's really important, right? I think we have a full track about this at PlatformCon, which is the blueprints track, right? The importance of just like visualizing it, like, right? Because you mentioned there's so many different moving parts, right? You have infrastructure code, you have your Kubernetes clusters, you have like your secrets, your security, your monitoring, and logging, right? Like, how do you make sense of all of this, right? It can be quite, I feel like, overwhelming for people, especially the ones that maybe are building their first platform, not like their 10th, to figure out, okay, how do I navigate this like super massive CNCF landscape and kind of like patch it together into something that makes sense for my own organization, right? And so, are there did you find, for instance, that the reference architectures from the community, or some of these other types of, which I've seen now, I think there have been probably like 20 or 30 talks this year that kind of use that as a blueprint in terms of like discussing what are the different components of reference architectures. But have you seen that in action? Have you seen other type of sort of standards that can help driving this type of best practice, Nikki?
So I think I'm going to borrow something from the software engineering world, actually. It's something called the C4 model. So I don't know if people sort of come across that, but it's this concept of kind of starting high and then drilling your way down into things. And just to be honest, as common sense, I think that makes a lot of sense to people, is that when you see, for example, the CNCF, the landscape, it's too much. There's a lot of detail everywhere. Like, I haven't got a clue what's going on, what I need to have a look at. But if you start high and say, okay, what are my really big systems? What are the big systems that are in play within the platform? How's the platform broken up? And then kind of dive into that, have a look what the components are in that. I actually think that is a nice way of kind of starting high and then diving a little bit deeper actually into some of the things. There are things out there, again, depending on your architecture and setup, that can do some of the stuff automatically for you. Like if you've got service meshes and things, you can get some of the things that they'll diagram all of your components and how they're connected and all these type of things. So I think there's a variety of things, but I always go back to basics and say, something where you can start high level and work your way down. That answers so many questions, I think, for people, because it talks to the executives right at the top. They can understand the top level, and then as the people get lower into the subcomponents or whatever it is, then they can figure out, what's going on there. And I think something that we've seen is that there used to be one platform team, but there's not. The platform team is now often broken up into very different areas, and they in themselves are subspecialities. And so everybody's not going to know everything. And so, but understanding your piece and what's going on there, and also again, I come back to this, but what is the contract for you to the next level up or to the level to the side? So if you're doing the pure infrastructure codes, the sort of the AWS layer or whatever it's like, and somebody's building Kubernetes on top of that, or depending on how it's structured, just to understand what is the contract between the two, and what are the big pieces I need to understand when I'm working with these things.
This for instance helped us to really also slice our teams properly. What you said. So what we did first was really giving, based on the planes we sliced, also the responsibilities, and so people knew exactly, okay, that's right now the construction site I work on, these are the technologies, and I have my APIs, contracts to the other team members, and it really helped also to make it understandable for our engineers. This was around 1.5 to 2 years ago when we built our own internal developer platform. So we have around 150 devs on the platform. Not that huge, but still not small. And really, this was brilliant. And so I can only recommend customers to start with a proper reference architecture, because it's not that difficult to build one, from my perspective, from my experience.
Totally agree. Yep.
Cool. I think we can end on that one, because I just got notified that we were supposed to wrap like a few minutes ago already. But this was really fun, especially when the moderator doesn't have to say too much. It means it was a good panel. So thank you so much, everybody, for taking the time and doing this and being a part of PlatformCon. It's been a pretty amazing week so far, and we look forward to ending in style. So we'll now disappear out of the screen, and you're going to wait a few minutes, and then the next panel is going to come in. And thanks again, Anna, Nikki, Joe, and Andrea for doing this, and see you around.